heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Higgins.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of St. Joseph. It is Current Events Wednesday, and our guest today is George Neumayr. He is senior editor and writer at the American Spectator, spectator.org. He's also author of The Biden Deception, The Political Pope, How Pope Francis is Delighting the Liberal Left and Abandoning Conservatives, No Higher Power, Obama's War on Religious Freedom. And he is always a blessing to have here on this show with us. George Neumayr, thank you so much for being back with us today. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you for having me. Good to be with you.
Excellent. Great. Yeah, we're going to get through, get to many of George's recent articles and just a lot of current events to get to today. But first, it's important that we always begin the Current Events Wednesday show by remembering the biggest current event of all, and that is the number one news story that ought to be reported by all the networks, but is going unreported today and every day, and that is the ongoing daily government-sanctioned, government-funded, government-protected mass murder of innocent children in the wombs of their mothers. Real people being murdered by the thousands today and every day in our nation and around the world, which also means the mass exploitation of pregnant moms in need for profit by the lie of abortion. In terms of the loss of human life, we have at least a 9/11 every day in the U.S. Imagine 3,000 of any other category of persons being murdered in a given day in our nation, and it going unreported by the media, and even mostly ignored by the churches. Imagine if that was happening every day, and you begin to understand something of the insane reality in which we find ourselves. According to a July 2020 article in the prestigious peer-reviewed medical journal The Lancet, we have a global death toll from abortion of 73.3 million children annually, which is more than 200,000 preborn children being murdered worldwide every day. It is essential that we put great effort into breaking through our own desensitization to this massive evil. We have to face reality on this and so much more. We must live, proclaim, and push forward the vision that every innocent human being, without exception, has a right to life. Even an atheist still ought to have the basic moral sense to see the evil of killing an innocent child. For those who believe in Jesus and His Catholic Church, we have the additional benefit of crystal clear authoritative magisterial teaching on this, which truly gives us absolutely no place to hide in treating those in the womb as any less valuable than us. Catechism of the Catholic Church 2270, quote, "Human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception, meaning fertilization. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life," end of quote. Also, if you've experienced abortion in some way as a mother, father, sibling, grandparent, etc., there are some great people, great resources available to help you in your healing process. We love you. You are not alone. You can go to lovewillendchildkilling.com and click on the Healing tab for more information. And one more example for today. Let's look at what's going on in Ukraine right now as an example. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine about 2 weeks ago now, the dangers facing the people of Ukraine are being shown and talked about incessantly on every news channel, while at the same time, these news channels ignore the reality of the daily mass murder of the preborn. This is the world of lies and spin and false narratives that we're living in. To refuse to acknowledge that is to be part of it. We are right to be skeptical of what we hear and see on the news. We are right to ask questions with respect to what our so-called leaders tell us. As the saying goes, trust but verify. Maybe for our time, verify then trust might be an even wiser strategy. So I'm probably like you, and that I'm not entirely sure about every detail going on and being reported about Ukraine, but I'm sure enough from what I've seen and heard that many in Ukraine are going through a horrific time, and our hearts ought to go out to them. I pray for them, and I pray for peace every day, peace in our hearts, peace in our families, peace in the womb, peace in our world. And I just want to give the friendly reminder today that we are wise not to fall into the lies and false narratives pushed by news channels that report incessantly on dangers that are posed to one group of people while they completely ignore even greater dangers facing another group of people. We must keep proper perspective. In fact, maybe it's the opportunity for a wake-up call for some. Notice the outcry to end the danger posed to those in Ukraine, and rightly so, but then notice the silence to end the danger posed to those in the womb, of which 200,000 will be murdered today, and 200,000 tomorrow, and 200,000 each day after that. We have to be honest about how desensitized we all truly are to the mass murder of 200,000 preborn children worldwide every day. And let's be 100% clear about one more thing. In keeping this rightly ordered perspective and calling on others to do the same in no way minimizes what is going on in Ukraine or anywhere else. Not at all. But to not keep this rightly ordered perspective and to not call on others to do the same, that vastly minimizes the mass murder of the preborn and the exploitation of pregnant moms in need by the lie of abortion that is going on throughout the world every day. And that desensitization, that silence, that vast minimization of the reality of abortion in our world is precisely what allows the daily mass murder to continue. Here are some remarks from Mother Teresa, St. Teresa of Calcutta, from the National Prayer Breakfast in 1994 to help us gain and maintain a rightly ordered perspective on reality in our time. She said this, quote, "But I feel that the greatest destroyer of peace today is abortion. It is really a war against the child. Murder by the mother herself. And if we accept that the mother can kill even her own child, how can we tell other people not to kill one another? Any country that accepts abortion is not teaching its people to love one another, but to use any violence to get what they want. This is why the greatest destroyer of love and peace is abortion." End of quote. We must keep proper perspective and live accordingly. George Neumayr, your thoughts?
I would tend to agree that, the outrage in the world today is very selective, and I certainly understand the condemnation of the dictatorship in Moscow. Putin, I think, is a gangster, and an amoral thug. But I'd like to see those same people who condemn him condemn the dictatorship in China, in Beijing, under which so many people are also suffering. And I'd like to see them condemn the dictatorship of relativism in the West, which, is the primary cause of the West's unraveling and decadence and the culture of death about which you're speaking. But the people who make the loudest noises about Putin, they never say a word, it seems to me, about those other dictatorships. Mm-hmm. And that they ought to be consistent in their condemnations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes sense that we are taking note of that and assessing this properly. One story that I came across that I found interesting, a Quinnipiac University poll that was released yesterday asked Americans what they would do if they were in the same position as Ukrainians are now. Would they stay and fight or leave the country? A majority, 55% of Americans said they would stay and fight, while 38% said they would leave the country, according to the poll. And the breakdown politically, I thought, was quite interesting. 68% of Republicans said they would stay and fight, compared to 57% of independents, and only 40% of Democrats said they would stay and fight. George, what do you make of those numbers?
Well, the most obvious interpretation is that Republicans are more patriotic than Democrats. The Republicans, I think, they truly, I think they promote a genuine patriotism, whereas the Democrats, right now are flirting with all of this anti-Americanism. The athletes who won't kneel, who boycott the flag, and athletes who make protests against the United States at the Olympics and so forth. And so the Democrats have been cultivating that kind of anti-Americanism, and I think that stance is reflected in the fact that a lot of Democrats probably, wouldn't support or wouldn't defend America in the event of a war.
Yes, and some remarks were made by a UFC fighter by the name of Bryce Mitchell. They've resonated with many, and I'd like to play them now and get your thoughts on these remarks, George. Here it is, UFC fighter Bryce Mitchell. Here it is.
Here's my first thought is I'm not going nowhere to fight none of these wars for these politicians. I'm staying at home, and when the war comes to Arkansas, I will dig my boots in the ground, and I will die for everything I love, and I will not retreat. If this country's invaded and everybody's saying, well, we gotta evacuate, we gotta leave, I will not. I will dig my boots in the Arkansas soil, and I will fight for the people that I love, for the land that I love, and the way of life that I love. But I'm not going overseas to fight. I don't know what's going on, to be honest, brother. I really don't.
All right. Again, I think UFC fighter Bryce Mitchell, his thoughts there resonated with many, just regular Americans, regular people. George, why do you think that might be?
Because, a lot of American leaders, they'll fight for the borders of other countries, but they won't fight for their own borders. And they're willing to pay for the wars of other countries and fight the wars of other countries, but they don't seem to care too much about the territorial integrity of the United States. And they're not doing much to preserve the strength of America. And they don't listen to the protests of the people in America. We've seen that in both here in the United States and in Canada. So, there's a lot of hypocrisy and dishonesty that's on display right now, and a lot of virtue signaling coming from our leaders who won't lift a finger to defend the United States of America. So I think that's where that athlete's anger is coming from.
Mm-hmm. George Neumayr is with us. He's going to be with us when we get back from the break. If you want to get a call in, any comment or question that you have today, you can do so right now. Phone lines are open, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Are you holding on to an old car or truck because you think dealers won't want it? Then consider donating it to the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network. This is a great way to turn your unvalued vehicle into a powerful gift for Catholic radio. You'll be taking part in our evangelization efforts to continue spreading Christ's love throughout the world. Our Lord uses Catholic radio to draw more people to Himself, and one of the best ways to support the Station of the Cross is by contributing to our vehicle donation program. The process is safe and simple. Your generosity will greatly benefit our mission to bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners. To find out more or to donate your vehicle today, visit thestationofthecross.com or call 1-866-628-CARS. That's thestationofthecross.com or 1-866-628-2277.
This is Jesse Romero, host of Jesus 911, heard weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm joined each day by a variety of co-hosts like Ruben Nava, Paul Clay, Dan Schneider, and my amazing wife, Anita Romero. We tackle Catholic devotions, spiritual warfare, family life, saving America, and everything in between. Join us each weekday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific for Jesus 911. You can also catch a bonus encore Saturdays at noon Eastern. God bless you. Keep the faith.
As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent from your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported. Through your generosity, we are able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel message and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments. The Station of the Cross thanks our supporters who have enabled us to broadcast Catholic programs for more than 20 years. Thank you for your continued support, and may God bless you and your family.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today on this Current Events Wednesday, George Neumayr. He is senior editor and writer at the American Spectator, spectator.org. Also an author of several great books, The Biden Deception, The Political Pope, No Higher Power, Obama's War on Religious Freedom, And we're very blessed to have him with us today. And George, I want to get your thought on this idea. Again, we've been talking about Ukraine a bit in that first segment, so let's carry that over here just a little bit longer. And look, there's a very real threat that the Biden administration and others in positions of power around the world will try to use this disaster, and I think there's evidence already that is happening, try to use this disaster as an opportunity to push other goals that they have. For instance, it sure seems like the Biden administration is going to use rising oil prices to do whatever they can to implement their so-called Green New Deal. They blame the skyrocketing prices at the pump on Russia, even though the Biden administration itself is largely to blame. And then they say we need to be energy independent, although not by increasing our drilling or building the Keystone Pipeline, for instance, but instead through the radical plans of their Green New Deal. Also, here's a point in fact in a Bloomberg News article from last month in February. It says here, former U.S. Treasury official Mark Mazur, he kind of gave the game away here. He left the department in September, and in talking about a gas tax holiday, he said it, quote, undercuts the administration's climate change goals, and, quote, we don't want lower prices for fossil fuel buyers. We prefer higher prices, end of quote. I'm sure that's not a quote he wants hanging around at this point, but it seems to give away their game plan. George, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that last quote you mentioned is very telling. The philosophy of the Biden administration is that they want people to use less energy, and particularly less energy that comes from fossil fuels. And so for them, an energy crisis is not so much a problem as a solution. You know, they think that that's actually in the interests of the United States to use less energy, to be less productive. You know, and this is one of the reasons why they don't want to stimulate the economy very much, because an economy that's really roaring is an economy that's using a lot of energy. And they don't want America to use a lot of energy. They want America to phase out fossil fuels and to be they're very stingy about the use of energy. And so just as in Europe, where a lot of liberals don't mind really high gas prices because it means that people will be driving less and so forth, that's the same attitude amongst the Biden officials. You know, for them, an energy crisis is not, it's not a crisis in their eyes. It's a climate change solution in their eyes. It means that the American people will be using a lot less energy, and that's what they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw today even they're coming out with a hashtag to try to blame all of the gas, the rising prices at the pump on Russia. So they're going to go full court press in the PR to try to make it seem like this is all the Russian plot and the Russians are to blame, when in fact this is something that goes along with their agenda quite well. So something to be aware of. Phone lines are open here. If there's any question or comment that you guys want to bring in today, we love to hear from you. 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. We have George Neumayr with us today. And in your most recent article up at Spectator.org, George, you write the headline of the article is Biden's Corruption of the White House, Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnership. So you're talking about this office that I'm sure most people are quite unfamiliar with. What do we need to know about the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships?
Well, it's really a misnamed office because it has absolutely nothing to do with the preservation of faith or the protection of religion in the public square. It's really just the politicization of so-called faith-based charities. These are charities that the Biden is enlisting in all of these causes that are not religious, that are blatantly political, such as his climate change activism, his amnesty advocacy, his pushing of vaccine mandates, and also the office is actually pushing secularism and atheism. The head of the office, Melissa Rogers, has been meeting with secularists and atheists, and she's bringing them into this office because she wants them to get federal grants rather than Christian adoption agencies and foster care agencies, which have been blocked. The actual purpose of the office, it was actually set up by George W. Bush, and he set up the office to ensure that faith-based charities had access to federal grants and monies. Well, that's not obviously Biden's purpose for maintaining the office, because he's blocking Christian adoption agencies from accessing federal grants. The policy of his administration is that only those agencies that bow to his LGBTQ agenda can receive federal grants. And so if you're a principled Christian adoption agency, you've been cut out of the federal grant process. So my point in that article is that this office has been completely turned on its head. It's no longer serving the purpose for which George W. Bush created it, and it's now simply just an appendage of Biden's left-wing political agenda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was recently taking a look at the newest USCCB budget that is published online, just to see if anything has changed with respect to the way they budget social justice issues, so-called social justice issues, because I've looked into this in the past and been disturbed at what I found, and in fact even had a public conversation going with Archbishop Neumayr on this, to which he wanted to cut the conversation off once we got into the details on this. But the fact is that pro-life, even though it is the preeminent social justice issue, if you want to label it that, it is not treated that way in the budget of the USCCB. There's about $2.5 million budgeted for pro-life activities. Large, and most of that is going to salaries and trips and things like that. So, there's some questions even in regard to that. But in regard to other things, there's about $80 million that are given to migrant refugee services. When I did bring that up to Archbishop Neumayr a couple years ago, he said, a lot of that is grants from the federal government. And so I looked into that, and about 75 million of that 80 million does come in from federal grants. Now that still makes there's still a double. It's still double in terms of the budget once you cut those grants out. It's still 5 million to 2.5 million, and there are other issues in there as well. But I want to ask you about those federal grants. They're taking in 75 million in federal grants just in that one area. Doesn't this taking this money from the federal government compromise the church? And is that something that goes along with your article here on the Office of Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships?
Yeah, I think that is a very telling illustration of this problem of religion entering into an alliance with government, not to promote anything religious, but to promote left-wing policies, which often hurt the country. In this case, we're talking about amnesty, advocacy and amnesty, and basically serving as a conduit. As somebody said, the USCCB has sort of become a travel agency for illegal immigrants. And it takes all this money that it gets from the government, and it uses it to help illegal immigrants basically break the law and enter the country and get on the pathway to amnesty. And is that part of the essential mission, or the mission of the Catholic Church, to encourage people to break the law? We're supposed to render to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. Certainly the protection of the border by the government is a responsibility that falls to Caesar, and one that the Catholic Church should be supporting, not undermining. But of course, Biden is in office now, and he favors that open borders position. And so the Catholic Church and Biden are coming together on this, and they are, contributing to this open border, this, invasion of our southern border by illegal immigrants. And it's outrageous that they're doing it in the name of religion, because it's not at all religious. It's simply a reflection of the left-wing policy goals of the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking with George Neumayr here about his most recent article up at Spectator.org, Biden's Corruption of the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. Let me give you a little taste of some of George's powerful writing here. In this article, he states, in Biden's State of the Union address last week, he reiterated his support for the Equality Act, which would force religious hospitals to perform transgender surgeries. It is hard to imagine a more egregious violation of religious freedom than that one. He goes on to say the only form of Christianity it will accept, meaning the Biden administration, in the public square is a politicized one that aligns with temporal liberal goals. But that is just a Christianity without Christ, a subversion of religion that produces polls like Biden, who could tout abortion in his address last Tuesday, then turn up the next morning with ash on his forehead. Let's play a clip of that. Here's Joe Biden coming straight from receiving his ashes from Cardinal Gregory. Here it is.
I was with the Cardinal this morning. He came over to give me ashes, and we both prayed for that, for the people of Ukraine.
And last night you continued to support Roe v. Wade. As a Catholic, why do you support abortion as a Catholic? Define church teaching.
I tell you what, I don't want to get in a debate with you on theology, but well, anyway.
But why? Why support abortion?
I'm not going to make a judgment for other people.
All right, George Neumayr, your thoughts on that disgrace?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the a Christianity without Christ is epitomized by a president who supports transgenderism and abortion and the rest of it while showing off his ash on his forehead. It just kind of shows you that for Biden, Catholicism is not it's not a religion. It's really just a nostalgic familial identity. It's just something that he happened to be born into, and he's maintaining only in the most nominal way. But it's not even. You can't even describe it as faith without works. It's neither faith nor works, really. It's really just a form of cultural nostalgia or something like that, that Biden just happened to be born into a Catholic family that went to church on Ash Wednesday, but it has no real meaning. Catholicism has no meaning with respect to the actions he's taking. I mean, this isn't, we're not talking about a debating society here. He's actually facilitating the killing of unborn children. He is a direct participant in the killing of unborn children. And if that's not an excommunicable offense, I don't know what is.
Yeah, as we close out this segment, I want to just share how George closes out the article. He writes, we often hear liberals say that they want church and state separate, but they don't. They want the two conjoined, with religion reduced to a servant of the state. Their goal is to take religion out of religion and put politics into it. From time to time, they may fake an enthusiasm about the unique contribution of religion to public life, but in practice, they impede it and only permit its connection to government if it does government's bidding. It is for this reason that Biden's faith-based office has no faith. Some have called the office pointless, but it is worse than pointless. It is an insidious corruption of religion. George Neumayr, you can check out that article from him at spectator.org. When we come back, we're going to have more with George, and phone lines are open. You can reach us 1-877-511-5483. We'll be right back.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. While White House science advisor Francis Collins says he is troubled by abortion, he also takes an historically troubling utilitarian view of abortion specimens. Collins claims such research after abortion is moral and ethical. Sunday's New York Times claims that the Texas heartbeat abortion ban has only had a marginal effect on abortion numbers. Dr. Michael New with the Charlotte Lozier Institute finds 5 shortcomings in the Times' patently abortion-friendly reporting. But even accepting the paper's arguments, simple arithmetic does not support contentions that abortions out of state and abortion pills offset a decline in abortion numbers. New says such arguments should wait for hard numbers due out in the next few weeks. This is Life News Radio. After a leading abortionist in the UK complained about Dr. Dermot Kearney for successfully reversing chemical abortions, Kearney was blocked from using natural progesterone with women who regret taking the abortion pills. The abortionist's complaint is now officially regarded as mere hearsay, and Dr. Kearney is back working with OBGYNs to provide abortion pill reversal. Abortion radicals in Maryland are pushing to legalize infanticide to 4 weeks after birth. Even if not seriously considered, it pushes the debate over other life issues to merely the somewhat less absurd. And they called themselves merely a leading provider of health care in city permits. But complaints in Visalia, California erupted after a neighboring business figured out it was Planned Parenthood. Permits stalled, and with declining medical care and growing abortion numbers, Planned Parenthood is looking to open elsewhere in Central California. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here on this Current Events Wednesday with our guest, George Neumayr. He is senior editor and writer at the American Spectator, spectator.org. You can also find his books, The Biden Deception, The Political Pope, No Higher Power. And now let's take a look at an article that George published at spectator.org from last month, from February. Kind of goes along with what we were talking about in the last segment, though, and I think it's a very important one to highlight here. And this is an article entitled "Teacher Promotes Gender Transition Closet." So I remember the video, I'm sure many in the audience do, from the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus from last July, where they sang that they are coming for our children. Well, this is just another piece of evidence on how true that is. George, what is the so-called transition closet that is being promoted by this public school teacher here?
Yeah, this was a teacher from California's Bay Area, and he was openly acknowledging that he encourages children behind their parents' backs, of course, to fool around with transgender identity. And so he's establishing at his school, apparently, this club where the child arrives at school wearing, an outfit that their parents have put them in, and then they proceed to encourage the child to change the outfit to, if it's a male child, to take off the male clothing and put on female clothing in this so-called transgender closet that this guy's promoting. And so he just went out on TikTok and admitted this very openly. And it just shows you, this is a trend in public education across the country. From California to Florida. We see in Florida that Florida has a law that seeks to ban any discussion of transgenderism in elementary school, or at least until the third grade. It's actually, the bill is, if anything, it's way too moderate. It really should extend to all grades. But this is what parents have to do in order to protect themselves and their children from these LGBT activists who are masquerading as teachers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for anybody who wants to have a little bit more of an understanding of who this teacher is, what this teacher is about, I'm going to play a quick clip here of this teacher telling you in his own words who he is. And here it is, a clip from this public school teacher who promotes this gender transition closet, which, by the way, if you pull the thread on it, the idea comes from being first implemented, I think, at a Protestant community somewhere, where it's a ministry, I guess, in some perverted sense to the person who put it together. But here's the clip from the teacher on the transition closet. Here it is.
I teach high school, and most days of the week I come to school in stilettos. I get to stand at about 6'6", and the reason why is so I can create an explicitly queer space for all of my students.
All right, so there's the teacher, and George, you say a sane society would not let him anywhere near a classroom. His so-called transition closet is a direct affront to parental rights and a gateway to disfiguring surgery. So this is what is going on. This is reality. So we present it as evidence for what people are doing out there, and folks that are being actually employed to be teachers of young people. So this is the thing we have to understand. The indoctrination has been going on a long time, and this is how far down the road we are in the indoctrination at this point. Any other thoughts on this, George?
Yeah, and if you watch more of that video, he goes on, he talks about how empowering, all of this identity changing is and so forth. He likens the transgender closet to the phone booth in which, Clark Kent becomes Superman. And the truth is the exact reverse. Transgenderism is not empowering, it's crippling. You don't turn into Superman, you turn into a psychological and physical and moral cripple for the rest of your life. That's the fate that they're consigning all these children to, who they're encouraging to undergo transgender surgery. This is a truly wicked and evil project that parents should be standing against all over the place. And I frankly, I'm surprised that the parental revolt against this isn't greater. It should be greater because it's so evil.
Absolutely. George Neumayr is with us. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like to bring to the table, to the discussion today, feel free to call in 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. Another article, George, that you put together last week came out on Spectator.org. CNN's new president has a background in smug liberalism. Tell us about this guy, Chris Licht.
Well, you probably know about CNN's previous problems. They got rid of their previous president because he was, having an affair with a subordinate, and that we were told that CNN was going to move in a more objective news direction after that. But the selection of this gentleman shows that to be utterly false. That this guy comes from, his last job was as a producer for Stephen Colbert, who is the very left-wing late night show host, who uses his show to bash conservatives and Republicans. And so the fact that this guy comes from that background indicates that he is going to he's not going to change CNN's course. He's going to cement CNN's liberal course. CNN is just going to continue to be a continuous anti-conservative network. And the selection of Chris Licht is just proof that direction is going to continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in fact, Stephen Colbert wished him a fond farewell on his program. Let's see a clip of that. Here it is.
Our own Chris Licht, right over there at that podium, is leaving this show to take over CNN. I trained the next president of CNN. So, I believe legally, CNN now stands for the Colbert News Network.
All right, so sometimes you say it's funny because it's true. In this case, I think it's not funny because it's true. George, what other thoughts do you have on this that might be important for us to hear?
Well, the appointment of this gentleman is confirmation of the total liberal bias that dominates news. Even like 30 years ago, under Ted Turner, Ted Turner wouldn't have hired a guy from late night television. He wouldn't have hired somebody with a background in smug liberalism. He would have selected somebody with an actual news journalistic background. But these networks, CNN, MSNBC, and so forth, they're not even looking for that anymore in their presidents. They're not looking for candidates with a background in hard news. They're looking for people like this guy whose background is not in news, but in liberal entertainment. And so that's really what news has become in this country. It's just an extension of the liberal entertainment world, which is just constantly propagandizing people. It's not informing people. It's not reporting the news. It's really trying to create the news and push liberal propaganda.
Mm-hmm. George Neumayr here with us. George, for people who really are interested in learning and understanding what is going on in the world, what are the sources that you recommend for getting their news? Where can they go that will be helpful to them?
That's a good question. There aren't that many really reliable sources out there. You have some of these conservative websites that try to monitor all the propaganda in the liberal media. I would, the Spectator tries to do that, and I know a number of other conservative sites try to do that. The Federalist and Breitbart and people like that, but the fact is that you have to be a very vigilant news consumer at this point, and you have to be skeptical of almost everything that you hear, and you have to really do your own independent research to verify much of what you're being bombarded with, because more often than not, the conventional wisdom is totally wrong. And the truth is has to be found elsewhere. It can't be found in the mainstream media. You have to really look for it yourself, do your own internet research, and just try to find as many objective sources as possible. But unfortunately, I can't provide a very lengthy list of those sources.
Right. Yeah, it is a sad reality that is the case. Phone lines are open if you want to get a comment in. Question today, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. I would encourage people to stay very much tuned in to your writing, George. George Neumayr's writing over at Spectator.org. Again, going through some of his recent articles today, but there's a lot more that are there that are certainly worth keeping up on. So, I think what we want to look for are people that seem to be reliable, and then once we find them, well, then we can understand that they're trying to do a really good job in giving us the truth, giving us facts. Maybe we can understand, well, this is a well-formed person, and we can get a sense of that. The more we know about them, the more we know about, the more we read their writing, and see how it plays out, that we can verify the things that are being said and all of that. I would highly recommend George Neumayr is one of the best that we've got, again, over at Spectator.org. George, another article from last week that you wrote, Biden's stale sales pitch, his State of the Union address drew upon his usual litany of lies. And so I do want to play a quick clip here. This is Biden calling once again for unity. This is one of the common things he does is he calls for unity, and this while he's trying to divide. So after he's been trying to pit the vaccinated against the unvaccinated for over the past year, as well as trying to use the national, to collude basically with the National School Board Association to label parents who object at school board meetings to the perverse things that are being pushed, labeling them as domestic terrorists. So this is the guy who's saying we need to be united. So here's a clip, Joe Biden from the State of the Union. Here it is.
We'll continue vaccinating the world. We've sent 475 million vaccine doses to 112 countries, more than any nation on earth. We won't stop because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases. We've lost so much in COVID-19, time with one another. The worst of all, the loss of life. Let's use this moment to reset. So stop looking at COVID as a partisan dividing line. See it for what it is, a god-awful disease. Let's stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other for who we are, fellow Americans.
All right, so there is Joe Biden calling for unity. It's like he really is some sort of a stage player, an actor at this point, playing a part. He can't possibly believe the nonsense, the rhetoric that he's reading off here, but there he is, Joe Biden from the State of the Union. George Neumayr, your thoughts?
His demagoguery is it's beyond parody at this point. In one breath he calls for unity, and then in the next breath he describes anybody who opposes his voting voting rights agenda, he describes them as racist and akin to, a segregationist like Bull Connor. So he's the last person we can rely upon, for advice on civility. His administration has been totally uncivil. It's called these parents at teachers at school board meetings. It's likened, his Department of Justice is likening them to terrorists. Silicon Valley, which is in the pocket of the Democratic Party at this point, is silencing conservatives left and right. So, the last thing he wants is a civil democratic conversation. He's doing everything in his power to try and turn America into a one-party state, basically, where conservatives don't really have a voice at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to be right back with George Neumayr and his good instincts and insights for us. If you want to get a phone call in, now is the last chance to do so. We'd love to hear from you in the final segment. 1-877-511-5483, 1-877-511-5483. We'll be right back.
At the Station of the Cross, we are blessed by the variety of donations our listeners generously contribute for our evangelization efforts, from planned gifts to employer matches. We even receive donations through transfers of stock. Please consider giving a gift of stock to help us continue sharing the love of God with our hurting world. If you are being called by God to donate through a transfer of stock from your brokerage account to ours, please ask your broker to contact us at 1-877-888-6279. Your broker will need to indicate the number of shares being transferred as well as the QSIP number of those shares. That's 1-877-888-6279. Thank you for considering a gift of stock to the Station of the Cross so that we can continue proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Bring many more people closer to our Lord by letting them know about Catholic Radio. One of the simplest ways to promote Catholic Radio is by displaying a bumper magnet on your car. Order your free bumper magnets at thestationofthecross.com. We'd be happy to send bumper magnets for your listening area so that others can come to know the Lord. That's the stationofthecross.com. Thank you for sharing Catholic Radio on the road.
Hi, this is Joe McLean, host of the Catholic Drive Time Morning Show. Weekday mornings, 7 a.m. on the Station of the Cross. We'll keep you informed and inspired with insightful guests and breaking news stories of the day. That's the Catholic Drive Time. Weekday mornings, 7 a.m. on the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic radio app. We look forward to joining you on the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Praise be to Jesus. May God love you.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with George Neumayr, our guest today on this Current Events Wednesday. George is senior editor and writer at the American Spectator, spectator.org, also author of The Biden Deception, Moderate Opportunist, or the Democrats' Crypto Socialist, and The Political Pope, How Pope Francis is Delighting the Liberal Left and Abandoning Conservatives, as well as No Higher Power, Obama's War on Religious Freedom, which he co-authored with Phyllis Schlafly. And so some great stuff there, some great reading from George Neumayr to check out. But he is with us here as we come down the stretch in this final segment. George, you wrote an article entitled Phil Mickelson's Crude Defense of the Saudi Gulf League. I would chalk this up as one that many of us probably missed, and you're on it, and you're highlighting this for us. What is important for us to understand about Phil Mickelson and his crude defense of the Saudi Gulf League?
Well, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not that important a story, but to me, it illustrates the corruption of sports, professional sports, that corruption, the fact that corruption now even extends to golf, which was heretofore one of the most unassuming and gentlemanly sports, for that corruption to spill into professional golf is sort of a sign of the overall direction of professional sports in general. which is, the professional sports is more and more increasingly defined by politics, by greed, by all these petty disputes. And so Phil Mickelson, he wanted to establish a new professional golf league that would be backed by the government of Saudi Arabia. And he wanted to do this to sort of teach the PGA a lesson. He feels that the PGA isn't supportive enough, apparently, of players. And so he was hoping to build this Saudi league as a form of leverage over the PGA, to get the PGA, I guess, to allow players to make more money and so forth. And so the government of Saudi Arabia was dangling millions and millions of dollars before all these players. And it looked like the league actually might have come to pass. But Mickelson made these outrageous comments about how he was willing to overlook the government of Saudi Arabia's terrorism and thuggery for the sake of teaching the PGA a lesson. And after that comment came out, it caused a huge firestorm. And all these players who had been flirting with the possibility of joining that league, they were totally scared away from it by this firestorm over Mickelson's comments. And so now it looks like that league is simply not going to, it's not going to happen. It's nobody's going to join it. Nobody's going to support it. But for me, it's just, it just shows you that the increasingly ugly pull of professional sports in general is unfortunately even affecting a game as quaint as golf. And so, I'd like to see love of the game emphasized much more than it is today. And I feel like love of the game has been overshadowed by all this liberal politics and pettiness and greed, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also, to me, it indicates something of the reality of human nature after original sin. Look, we need Jesus. Otherwise, we do get into this selfishness that for him to make comments like that, it's just exposing it for all to see. But this is something that everybody has to contend with. This idea of kind of going along with evil, basically, if it can somehow work out for you. So we don't want to do that. And so we want to be really clear about what we're doing and choosing the good. And we need God's grace. So Jesus came for us. And in this season of Lent, let's remember that he died for us, laying it all out for us, calls us into communion with himself, with Almighty God, the Holy Trinity. And so, look, we've got to say yes to his invitation to his Catholic Church, the sacramental life. It's all there for us. So I don't know that Phil Mickelson would be listening here, but if he were, I'd invite him to, I don't know if he's Catholic or what he is, but come on, get baptized or get back to confession and work on that selfishness that I'm sure must have become very clear to him in the firestorm that followed. But moving on here, I do want to get your thoughts on this important topic. You wrote an article entitled "Law Firm Seeks to Sue Pro-Choice Organization for Funding Illegal Abortions in Texas." So tell us what's going on here. We haven't been hearing a whole lot about what's happening in Texas. Certainly the mainstream media isn't going to cover this if it doesn't look good for the pro-abortion folks. But what's happening here?
Well, one piece of good news is that law, that Texas heartbeat law, seems to have caused the abortion rate in Texas to go down by half. It could be that, a lot of these people are leaving the state and getting abortions elsewhere, or they could be using abortion pills. But the fact is that surgical abortions have actually gone down in Texas as a result of that Texas heartbeat law, which actually empowers individual Texans to enforce the law in the event that they learn of somebody who has paid for or supported an abortion after the period when the child has a heartbeat. And so those groups, the St. Thomas More Society, I believe, is bringing a lawsuit against a couple of abortion groups in Texas who have admitted that they paid for an abortion after the child could experience a heartbeat. And so that's what I was writing about, was that Thomas More lawsuit, which, shows how the Texas heartbeat law is unfolding in the state. They designed the law so that it would be enforced not by the Texas government, but by individual Texans. And so what Thomas More is doing is really putting that law into it's applying that law now. Where, it's one of the first examples of the law actually being applied. It's something I think the pro-lifers around the country should support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're blessed to have George Neumayr with us today. You can find his articles over at spectator.org. George, any article that you're working on now, anything that you're eyeing up that you'd like to preview for us that might be coming out soon at spectator.org?
Well, I just wrote an article today. It's not on a Catholic subject. It's on Spygate, the Obama administration spying on the Trump campaign and on Trump. And the more we learn about this, this Spygate, the worse it looks. We're finding out all sorts of very sordid and disturbing things about that investigation. The Obama administration was actually using, a quasi-Republican spy to infiltrate the Trump campaign. This gentleman named Stephen Halper, and he was befriending campaign volunteers, 3 campaign volunteers basically, for the purpose of entrapping them. In effect, he was encouraging them to talk about the campaign's ties to Russia, but the fact is there weren't any ties to Russia. And so really it looks, in retrospect, the whole thing does look like entrapment. But there are other really disturbing examples from that investigation which are coming out. And so John Durham, who is the special counsel at the Justice Department, who's tasked with investigating this whole matter, he's going to produce a final report on this, and he may produce further indictments. And I'm hoping that that all of that will actually catch the principal architects of this travesty, this act of audacious political espionage by the Obama administration. It's going to go down, I think, in the history of political espionage as one of the dirtiest tricks ever played by one party against another party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been waiting a long time for that Durham report. We were hoping maybe it would come out before the presidential election of 2020, but here we are in 2022. Hopefully, we're going to have a lot that does take place. May the truth be exposed, and may people be held accountable. George Neumayr, thank you so much for all of your good work. Thank you for being with us today.
Sure, thanks for having me.
All right, and again, want to remind people to go to spectator.org, the American Spectator. You can find George's good work there. Also, check out his books, The Biden Deception, The Political Pope, No Higher Power. Also, if you want to reach out to me on anything pertaining to the show, feel free to do so. Jim H. at thestationofthecross.com. God bless you.